This time last year is usually a sentence and a phrase that I use a lot around this time of the year. And mainly it's because everyone has optimism in February and in March. And it's no different in Auburn, Alabama. But you remember where the optimism was drawn from? This time last year, the optimism in Auburn was being drawn from the fact that you had just painted the walls with Purdue's blood. How did that happen after a somewhat disappointing season? Well, remember, just to give the proper backstory here, we watch Auburn go into the bowl season, and we've got changes. Chip Lindsey's the offensive coordinator at Kansas for I think 45 seconds, wasn't it? And then he takes the head job at Troy. Well, this man, Gus Malzahn, says, I'm doing what I came here to do. It was a mistake. He was famously quoted as saying, it was a mistake to ever give up my clipboard. I'm taking it back, and I'm calling plays in this bowl game. And so what did he do? He called plays in the bowl game, much to the chagrin of the Purdue Boilermakers. So Auburn names the score in the bowl game. And then we come into January, and then we go into February, and everyone's jacked because it's all of a sudden like Gus Malzahn's found that mojo that's so important in this world, and we're going to go into spring, and we got either Bo Nix or Joey Gatewood, both of whom seem to be more talented than maybe the options we've had on campus, and we nailed that. I don't want to pat myself on the back, mainly because this shirt's too restrictive to do so. But Bo Nix, and I'll stand by this, is probably pound for pound as talented this side of Cam Newton as any quarterback Malzahn's had. Whether they can develop him to his ultimate potential remains to be seen, and that's an entirely separate topic. I think the overarching key topic for Auburn football now and forever is, will this coaching staff ever recruit from high school and develop a quarterback to be a championship caliber player? But having said that, everyone thought things were going to be all well and good because Malzahn's calling plays now. We're going to get back to our roots, and we're going to run more tempo, and we're going to maximize the potential of the personnel that we have. We recruit to one system, we play to the other one. Well, now we're a year later. And I think that one of those gaps is forming maybe with Gus Malzahn's perception of his program and fans' perception of the program. Because if I just snap my fingers and say, Auburn 2019, what were they? Most people's consensus is, it wasn't all that great. If Auburn played in the ACC last year, they're probably 11-1, and that's if they face Clemson. I don't think Gus Malzahn views last year as a failure. I think once you get 50,000 feet in the air and you just have revisionist history, you remember, well, we didn't win the SEC West. We didn't play in Atlanta. I mean, we got thrashed by Minnesota, and I'm going to let that be an island unto itself. I'm not talking about bowl season. But this was a 9-win team in the regular season. I don't think I need to remind anyone how tough the schedule was. And I don't think I need to remind you, or maybe I do, because that's what the show's for, the losses they had. At Florida, we were on the sideline. We were at that one. That was a one-possession game until very late. At LSU, we were on the sideline for that one. It turns out we were at a whole lot of Auburn games last year. Famously, a 3-point game. They ended up coming as close as anyone ever was going to, as history turned out, to beating LSU, at least on the scoreboard. And then they lose one-possession style against Georgia. We were on the sideline for that one. They beat Alabama. Their 3 losses, 2 of those teams played in the SEC championship game. 1 finished the season red hot, top 10, and a lot of people are going to be on that Florida bandwagon this year. And so Gus Malzahn looks around, and he sees his buddy Chad Morris get fired at Arkansas. Now, Gus Malzahn's like most other coaches. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It's just like in recruiting. It doesn't matter if you got a 5-star multi-year starter at left tackle. If there's another 5-star left tackle out there on the trail and he wants to come, you take him and you just figure out the roster situation. Same at quarterback. Well, it's the same on your coaching staff too. So Chad Morris is available. Make no mistake, Arkansas notwithstanding, Chad Morris is a heck of a coach and he's a heck of an offensive mind. Malzahn's known him since Moses was a child, and so he hires him. That wasn't what caught my attention. What caught my attention, and everyone else's subsequently on the Plains, was Gus Malzahn brings him in. Next question, what's he going to do? He's your offensive coordinator. Okay, but what's he going to do? I was doing a hit with Brandon Marcello from Auburn Undercover recently, and man, he could not have echoed my sentiments anymore if I had given him a script. I asked him essentially, what's the role going to be here? And Brandon Marcello said, and out of his mouth, I agreed with every word and endorsed every thought, well, it's what Malzahn says or it's what I think. I mean, like, what do you really want to know here? Because Malzahn says all the right things. We're going to develop that intermediate passing game more. We're going to work on different passing concepts. It's going to be Chad Morris's offense. I trust him. He's the best offensive coordinator in America. We're going to do what every new offense since the beginning of time has done, incorporate the tight end more. And essentially after all that, Brandon Marcello said, and I agreed, okay, well, I'll kind of believe that when I see it. Here's why. Last year wasn't a disaster, guys. Auburn is not a situation like South Carolina where it is a for sure, do or die, make or break, torch the barn, kill the rat, start over from scratch offensively kind of deal. I don't think. And I don't think Gus Malzahn views it that way either. What I think is he made a move, and then they'll just figure it out as they go. But let's just say, for argument's sake, as spring ball gets set to open down there, let's say for argument's sake, this is Gus Malzahn's mentality. You don't learn that stuff in the spring. And not only for the reasons I'm about to mention, in fact, I'll go ahead and mention them now. You got multiple offensive linemen to replace. You've got a new offense you're putting in, allegedly, and you got a bunch of new pieces to move around. See, 2020 was the nightmare year. People at Auburn have seen it coming for 2 years on the offensive line, and they don't have the horses. That's going to be my prediction for you. I don't think they have the horses to have a championship caliber offensive line. Well, that matters for obvious reasons, but it also matters for part B of what I was about to tell you. We're installing a new offense down here. Forget about your offense. Forget about your multi-layered passing concepts and philosophical changes you're going to put in. You got to get the nuts and bolts of this offense figured out. So if anyone thinks or has grand illusions of wrapping up spring and coming out of this thing with everything solved and everything figured out on the plains, I think you got another thing coming, and that's not just if you're a poster on a message board or a caller to a talk show. I think it's the same if you're a coach on this coaching staff, up to and including the head man. So when are we going to find out how real this is? And this is, again, acknowledging argument's sake here. I'm going to give Malzahn benefit of the doubt, and let's just assume it is Chad Morris's offense. It's easy for it to be your offense in the spring game. It's easy for it to be your offense when you're playing Roast Beef Tech and Catawba Community College, to use a local Columbus, Georgia reference. They play North Carolina in week 2. UNC could be formidable this year, but if they get by UNC, they don't play, in all likelihood, a ranked team until at Georgia week 6. And where we find out where rubber really meets road is when it is 13-3 with about 4 minutes and change to go until halftime, and they have totally bogged down after, as usual, the first 15 or so plays work out, and they don't really dent the scoreboard all that much. And it's Chad Morris's offense. Until you go in the locker room, Malzahn always loves those halftime adjustments, like you couldn't do it with 2 minutes to go in the half. But go in that locker room, and you come out for the third quarter, is it still Chad Morris's offense? And when it's 19-6, and it's midway through the third quarter, it's 19-9, and it's the end of the third quarter, it's just a hideous game. Weather's not an issue, it's just inconsistency is the issue. Is it still Chad Morris's offense? I'm telling you right now, Malzahn nearly sank one time before letting someone else hold the old proverbial clipboard. I don't think he's sinking a second time doing that. He may go down. Every coach knows it's coming eventually. He may go down, but if he does, it's going to be him clutching that headset and clutching that clipboard, and that's why I think 2020, forget spring. I mean, spring. We got to use spring to figure out who your starting offensive linemen are going to be down there, whether you got 5 new ones. I didn't even mention new offensive line coach. Why not? New offensive, everything's new at Auburn, except the quarterback position, ironically. And so you watch offensive line in the spring, and we're going to be following this, and we'll have our ear to the ground and leverage and work our network just as well as hopefully anyone in the industry to find out what's happening at all these outposts, Auburn included, during spring. But what I want to know is far more basic than what's the offensive line going to consist of? What's Bo Nix going to be like year 1 to year 2? I just want to know, philosophically, in the meeting room, when it's just one-on-one, there are no cameras or microphones present. Coronavirus, can't do that, sorry. What are the conversations between Chad Morris and Gus Malzahn? And then, when the heat's turned up and it's pressure cooker time, what are those conversations? And does the head man remember the conversations and the press clippings from the spring? I think you guys have seen that story play out before.